Welcome to EdTech Talk, where we dive deep into the dynamic world of educational technology, course design, and feature faculty insights in higher education. I'm your host, Joy Ray, and in this episode, we are joined with Instructional Coordinator Melvin Smith and Instructional Designer Taylor Matthews. Today, we will be discussing everything instructional design. But before we go ahead and get started, if you guys could take a moment to introduce yourself and your background and just let us get to know you, that would be great.
So again, my name is Melvin Smith. I'm an instructional coordinator that covers sociology and political science. I started my educational career studying business administration and then somehow shifted over to sociology towards the end of my undergrad, where I was studying at NC State. I continued there to get my master's in sociology. And one of the major things that we studied there was learning how to teach. And so teaching sociology and engaging students has been a big theme. And so that's so great.
Right. Hey, everyone. I'm Taylor Matthews. I am an English instructor here as well as an instructional designer in the CTLE. A short background. I started out as an English teacher in the secondary ed classroom, high school classroom, and then started as an adjunct here at Forsyth Tech, and which has led me to my full-time English position and now part-time kind of dual role as instructional designer as well.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to hear from both of you and your experiences with this topic. So instructional design has been a field that has increased in popularity, especially with the rise of online education, hybrid, all that fun stuff. So I know when I first started doing instructional design in a previous role and they started introducing it to our company, we were all kind of like, what is instructional design? Why do we need it? Like, what is this new thing? And it took some time to really understand it and what it was all involved with it. So can you explain in what you guys see as instructional design and why it's important here at Forsyth Tech?
Sure. So I will say before I went to graduate school, and I was a teacher, instructional design, I think I learned the components of instructional design before I learned that instructional design was actually a thing. So its own field, because for me, with lesson plannings, objective-based, analyzing data, looking at achievement gaps, all of these types of things I thought was just what you did as a teacher. I didn't know the science or theory behind it until I went to graduate school. And so then working at the community college level where a lot of instructors have such strong content knowledge, but the pedagogy or andragogy piece, they might not be so familiar with. So for me, it was kind of like an easy transition into instructional design because I was just kind of honing in on skills that I was already practicing as a high school English teacher. So yeah, that for me, it was kind of learned backwards design. I learned about it in kind of a not linear way. And so yeah, that's kind of what it's been like for me as far as learning about instructional design and then actually being an instructional designer. And I know Melvin went to graduate school as well for instructional design, right?
Well, I went for sociology and we had a course in designing sociology courses, and instructional design was a major part of that course. And so the instructor that I was working with, she studied sociology of teaching. And so she wrote a couple of books and developed a class for us. And that's where, I kind of cut my teeth with instructional design. So it's really the only way I know how to teach.
Right.
I was never introduced to another way of teaching. I got some experience teaching under older professors as a teaching assistant, And they were still, more along the lines of coverage and doing activities. And the students were just supposed to catch up with whatever it is what the
Mm-hmm.
was pushing out to them. And as we progressed further in the program and we got to that, this was kind of the final course of the program, was you had to create your teaching portfolio and the teaching philosophy. And then you had to go from there and show your ability to design a course. And so doing that was my first experience, and that's just what teaching is. So for me, instructional design is just the start of teaching a class. It's the process of facilitating learning and making sure that the student gets what they're supposed to get out of the class. And it's just a student-centered approach to entering the classroom, putting the knowledge base that I have based off of on sociology and anything else that I study to the side, and then allowing the students' needs to guide how I use that knowledge that I have.
I really like that. I like the using the student-centered approach. I know a lot of times instructors where they're subject matter experts in the content matter, but knowing how to communicate that to students sometimes is really difficult when they have a whole different base level knowledge than you. So yeah. What are some misconceptions you guys find that people might have towards the field of instructional design?
I can start. I think the one that I hear the most is that it is taking away some type of academic freedom. I think professors who approach the course with a set of things that they want to teach the students, that's that coverage approach that I was just talking about. They have a hard time realizing that they're not losing that ability to cover all of the things that they want to cover. They're just redirecting it and focusing it in a way that lets the student get the most out of what they're coming into the classroom for. Another one that I hear way too often is that it adds more work. And so look at a class and you say, we can design this better and do some things here to get more out of it. A lot of people see it as more work, and they don't really understand that it's a little bit of extra work on the front end, but it pays off so much on the back end in terms of you being able to engage your students and direct them in the right way throughout the course. And I think a lot of people see it as an enemy of traditional design. So like you're have these two things that are competing, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that there's a lot of room for the traditional things that professors have always done. It's just, again, refocusing it, directing it at the students, and sometimes just cutting out some of the fluff and making sure you get to the point.
I liked the term that you use, focus. Like as soon as you said focus, a visual that came into my mind was like using a microscope. And when you look at something, you have to get it in focus. And I feel like that's a good way to describe instructional design in terms of you're focusing what you want the content to be and getting rid of that fluff. I really liked that. Taylor, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to echo a lot of things that Melvin said. Melvin and I worked together on the redesign, the refine and redesign project that we took on as a college. And Melvin was one of the first instructors that I worked with, and we worked one-on-one for weeks and weeks. And what he was saying about some folks who think it's more work. Well, whenever you actually lay out your course and you're evaluating your course and making sure, these objectives align with your learning activities, and it can seem overwhelming at first, but I will say a lot of folks with the shift, to 8-week classes, we had no choice. You have to reevaluate your course. And then in doing so, in working through all of these, research-based theories on how people learn and making sure that you are delivering a course to students that is focused on the mastery of the objectives in the course and not just teaching what you want to teach because you like to teach it, and teaching how you learned as a student, and all of these things. Once you really work through this whole process, it does make things so much easier and less work throughout your teaching. And once you get in the habit of these practices and you see the results in your classrooms, because you will, and we analyze data, in the CTLE, we analyze data in the English department. You have to have data informed instruction. And when you start to look at the achievement gaps, closing those achievement gaps, and you see the fruits of your labor, I do think that's when a lot of folks, have come kind of around, some of them, to the thought of instructional design, instructional designers, because a lot of folks are like, kind of feel that territorial kind of vibe that like Melvin was talking about, like we're stepping on toes and academic freedom. But, when I myself have been a teacher and in every capacity for 15 years, and like Melvin said, this is just kind of what I thought came with teaching. And so, yeah, to me, it makes sense. And a lot of folks are seeing the benefits of their hard work that they put forward in the redesign and the constant redesign and self-evaluation.
Yeah, I like that, not stepping on people's toes. I know in my previous role, that was always a fear. And the reality, instructional designers can't do their job without subject matter experts. Right. We need them, and we hope that they see an equal partnership with instructional designers. Mm-hmm. And it is a lot of work on the front end, but hopefully, I know most instructors like the interaction with students and being able to work one-on-one, and hopefully improving a course will hopefully add to that more desired time that you want to be able to work with students one-on-one. There are a lot of different instructional design models out there. We got ADDIE, we got backwards design, and tons of them. Do you guys utilize any one of those models? If so, which one do you utilize? And if you could describe it, that'd be great. If you don't, what are some of the main principles that you guys use of instructional design?
Yeah, so that's the technique that I was taught first, and it wasn't even presented to me as backwards design. It's just simply laying out those objectives and letting those objectives be your roadmap and guiding you for everything you do in the course. And so I later on figured out that I was doing backwards design and digging a little bit deeper into it. And again, it's just a process of starting with those objectives or those goals, desired outcomes, and then determining what are the acceptable ways of gauging that and measuring that, and then leaving the fun part last, which is planning the experiences and finding the textbook that fits and other materials that fit into that process. And so it's a pretty straightforward process. There's a lot of templates and stuff out there to help people do it. But I think the most challenging part of it is getting those objectives first. And so my approach to backwards design is to start with my teaching philosophy. And that's one of the things that I think was most beneficial from my time in grad school, was that I was required to write down a teaching philosophy. And it definitely grew since then. It was very, basic when I first wrote it down. It was just, create an engaging course and really just worried about the students wanting to sit through my listen to me. And then it grew into me wanting to teach students how to use sociology as a tool that they can use to understand their lives. And so now that guides the courses that I create. And so that's my approach, is backwards design is start with those objectives and then end with the materials that are going to allow me to meet those objectives.
And same for me. And to me, it just, like Melvin said, I didn't know it was that's what it was called. To me, it's like, if you're thinking about anything, like the end result, like, okay, I want a new deck. So you see that you want that new deck. Well, that's the end result. That's the desired result. Well, what do I have to do to get there? well, do I have the skills to complete this deck? Do I have the materials I need to complete this deck? Is the weather going to be right? Is that, all of these different factors that go into a desired result or a plan you have for your life. I want to do this when I grow up. Well, how do I get there? So to me, it makes sense instead of, thinking about, ooh, I really love this one era in American literature. I'm going to teach this. Well, okay, why am I teaching this? What do I want the students to get out of this? What is the value in teaching them this? I need to know that first before then I can plan what content I'm going to use, what activities, because the end result, the objectives and the competencies, like Melvin said, that has to drive the instruction. And so, yeah, backwards design for me. I've used ADDIE models too in designing other types of professional learning materials and things like that. But for my students in my classroom, it's always backwards design.
I think they're all different instructional designs, but I think they all have some very common principles, and all of that is know what the end result is and continuously develop, implement, and revise. And I think that is a very common thread among all of those different models that are out there. If you guys want to talk briefly about some of your experience with creating or modifying courses and how instructional design was implemented in those, I think that would be great as well.
Well, I just created a course. We went through this long redesign process, and I redesigned our Sociology of the Family course. And one of my goals for this course was to give the students something that they could take out of the classroom feeling like they knew more about themselves, but something that was useful, something that could either give them confidence to transfer on into taking these types of classes at a university level, or some type of writing sample or something they could use as they continue on their academic careers. And again, my goal is always starting with the idea that I want them to be able to use sociology as a tool. So in this case, I wanted them to use sociology as a tool to understand themselves and their family dynamic. And so I started with that, and then I went into what's the best way to be able to judge that. And so I dug through my methods books, and I found autoethnographies to be a very useful tool, and something that I thought would fit with this generation and the way that they see themselves and the way that they like to understand stuff. So they like to see themselves represented in things. And I thought no better way than to teach them how to study themselves and their family, which is something that everybody has some version of to some degree. And so I started developing the course around completing this autoethnography. And ultimately I went into my bag of traditional tricks, and I pulled out a textbook, because I am a advocate of continuing to use the textbook. I think it's a wonderful tool. And so another one of my goals was to be able to teach the students how to use the textbook, as opposed to making them just read through everything in the textbook. And so I came up with some formative assessments that allowed them to get into the textbook and allowed me to see that they were actually reading it. And then I used certain aspects of the information from the textbook to get them to incorporate it into their autoethnographies, to give them some type of parameters around it. And the end result is they come up with not a paper, they write a series of essays, but they end up writing a outline for a presentation, and then they put together a PowerPoint or Prezi or some type of presentation that they present this to us, and they're able to use pictures, memories, all types of different things, that video, whatever they want to put in there, social media posts, and this just tells a story of their family, and they can go in a lot of different directions with the story. And so I had a student come in and just tell me how much he enjoyed the class. It was challenging to him, but he feels like it prepared him to move forward. And he also said that he spoke a lot more with his grandmother over the semester to ask questions of his family. And so I thought it was a wonderful benefit of the course. And so that's how I've used it to date, is to start with those objectives and then lead to a course that I think the students take away or leave away with something that's very valuable and meaningful to them.
That sounds amazing, and just like such a fun project to be for students to be able to complete. That's great.
Yeah.
A little nervous at first, but they kind of they said they haven't seen anything like it, and the term biography threw them off. But once they got over those hurdles, they started putting out some really good work.
Yeah, and I think I remember you working on this in its inception and focusing on the scaffolded pieces of this assessment, which, we know as teachers and instructors, like or instructional designers, how important those scaffolded pieces are. And so even though, yes, it's a whole semester long undertaking, that making it manageable and digestible, and all of these pieces that lead to those tie back to those learning objectives, and the work that you really put into it. And also, I like what you said about using the textbook as a tool, and it is a tool. It is an instructional tool, and so I think we're the same way. We still have a textbook, but we're incorporating a lot of OER resources in our courses too, to try and just knock down costs too for students. But this process, the redesign, and what we've done to redesign in the English department, I mean, we're going on 1.5 years of work. And right now, seeing the first courses that we spent 1 year redesigning being taught. And so now we're in the gathering data process to see what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to change? Are our students succeeding? Are they meeting these objectives? Why or why not? And like Joy said, just the constant, I think this being an instructional designer, it was just kind of a natural fit for me, because I'm probably too self-reflective sometimes and over analytical. But that piece, the reflective piece in everything, I feel like in life is so essential, and nothing is stagnant. We're not going to build one course and like Melvin's course is going to evolve. It evolves with the needs. And as long as it evolves with the needs of our students, then we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's just an iterative process, and it keeps evolving and changing. And that's what's so great. Nothing's going to be perfect, as long as everything could be improved by small little changes. It will become something really great. So for our last question, what is one piece of advice or information that you would like to pass on to your colleagues about instructional design? Maybe they're just getting started with instructional design. They are scared to come and talk to some instructional designers. What is one piece of advice you would like to give them?
I would give them two. The first one I would say is start with your teaching philosophy. Spend a significant amount really, really just thinking about what guides you and what you want to do, and as an instructor, and don't worry about your subject matter when you're doing that. Just worry mostly about what is it that you want to accomplish when you go in that room and get in front of those students. And the other part I would say is don't be afraid to get started. The most fulfilling part about it for me is the going back and forth, the revision, and allowing the feedback from the students to allow you to continue and improve this course. And so don't be afraid to get started. Just, take your first swing, and if it works, then good for you. But if it doesn't work the way you want it to, there's always room to improve on it. And that's really the goal, is to continue to improve.
Yeah, what great advice. Yeah, no, I'm just gonna have to say ditto. I mean, why are you doing this? Why is this important? And it has to be for the students, and if that's not it, then maybe this isn't a fit.
Well, thank you so much, Taylor and Melvin. This has been such a great episode, listening to you guys with your experiences and insight and your knowledge. It was truly a pleasure to be with you guys and get to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of EdTech Talk. Tune in next time for more insights, discussions, and inspirations in the world of higher education. Until then, keep on leading and learning.